Chapter 1. You are bad in bed. The sound of running water beside her ears woke up Chandler Su, who was sleeping soundly. She opened her sleepy eyes and was shocked by the scene in front of her. It was a deluxe room. The morning sun was shining on the messy sheets. The clothes and shoes of a man and a woman were scattered on the carpet. The room was filled with the smell of lovemaking. As she looked down at her naked body under the blanket, she felt discomfort down there. Chandler grabbed her long hair hard. The scattered memory of last night came alive like slides. Her boyfriend, who had been in love with her for 3 years, said that she was not gentle, considerate, and had no charm. He then went abroad to study for a doctor's degree with a girl from a rich family. Chandler, who looked tough on the outside and was, in fact, vulnerable on the inside, was drunk as a fiddler last night. Impulsively, she grabbed a man randomly at the bar and took him to the room. At this moment, Chandler was sitting on the bed, her legs trembling. She had always respected and loved herself. How on earth could she do something that she wouldn't even dare to think of doing normally? It seemed that it was an absolute truth that alcohol does make a cowardly man strong. She put on her clothes in a panic, grabbed her bag, and wanted to sneak out without being noticed. She didn't expect the bathroom door to open with a loud bang. Chandler instinctively turned around and saw a super handsome man walking out of the bathroom. He had thick hair, a firm face, distinctive facial features, a fit body figure, and behind that loose robe was his half-hidden, sexy, and strong chest muscles. This man was a knockout. It was by far much better than her ex-boyfriend. Chandler instantly felt a sense of satisfaction in her heart. She would rather give her virginity to this stranger than to that unfaithful man. Thinking back on everything that had happened last night, Chandler's face blushed immediately. Last night, he was at times gentle and at times rough. At the age of 25, she tasted the feeling of being a woman for the first time. Of course, right now, standing in front of him, Chandler was ashamed, but she still pretended to be calm. In contrast to Chandler, who was at a loss, he appeared to be very natural. He looked at her from her head to toe with his deep eyes. He curled his lips and showed a disdainful expression, which made Chandler very uncomfortable. Then he suddenly walked to the bedside and reached out to pick up his Gucci wallet. Chandler understood immediately as she saw a stack of cash in his wallet. Did he take her as that kind of woman and wants to pay her for last night? No, she couldn't be insulted like this by a man. Chandler immediately took out the only remaining $150 from her bag and threw it on the wrinkled sheets in front of him. He raised his eyebrows and stared at her in confusion. Chandler pretended to be calm and held her hands in front of her chest. She looked up at him and said in a critical tone, "Although you are good looking, you are outwardly strong and inwardly weak, and you are poor of skills. So you only worth this much." What did you say? Obviously, Chandler's words had irritated him. She saw that he was frowning and he put on a long face. In order to pretend to be more real, Chandler stepped forward and patted him on the shoulder. She said in an earnest tone, "I suggest that you offer some discount first and accumulate some experience. When your skills get better, you can charge more naturally. Women nowadays are not easy to serve." "You're asking for trouble." He frowned and uttered a few words through his teeth. Chandler saw that his hands were clenched into fists. She didn't want to practice with him. She chose to escape quickly from the scene before things got out of control. When she walked out of the Hilton Hotel, his stiff, long face was still in her head. Chandler felt her fast heartbeat on her chest and felt lucky that she had run fast enough. Chapter 2. This can't be true. After grabbing some breakfast casually, Chandler rushed to the company. On her way, she suddenly received a call from Mrs. Su. "Chandler, I met your elder aunt today, and she said that your grandpa is seriously ill. Why don't you go to the nursing home to pay him a visit? After all, I'm not a member of the Su family anymore. It's not appropriate for me to go." Mrs. Su knew that her older daughter is stubborn, so she tried to say it in a discussion tone. I don't want to go. Grandpa is a retired cadre, and his pension is very high. Whenever her dissipated father and his mistress saw her visiting her grandfather, they would beat her and scold her, saying that she was after Grandpa's money. Your grandfather treated you very well before he got sick. After all, he is almost 90 years old. He doesn't have too much time left. Just go there for once. Mrs. Su tried to persuade her earnestly. Before Grandpa fell ill, he had treated the two sisters very well, so Chandler had to do it reluctantly. I'll go at night, Chandler said after thinking for a while. Then remember, if you run into your father, don't talk too much, Mrs. Su said eagerly. If he doesn't mess with me, I won't mess with him either. Chandler then hung up the phone. Back then, her mother knelt on the ground and begged her father, saying as long as he does not divorce and could provide her and their child home, she could turn a blind eye to his affair with that woman. However, her jerk-off father was still not satisfied. Not only did he divorce her, but he also took away all the money. Only the mother and her two daughters knew what kind of hardships they had been through over these years. As soon as Chandler sat on the chair, her colleague and her best friend, Lisa Chow, came over and looked at Chandler. Didn't you just break off? Why your cheeks look so rosy? I spent $150 on a toy boy last night to soothe my broken heart, Chandler said and laughed in a self-mockingly way. You can't get good ones at a cheap price, Lisa curled her lips. No matter what they were talking about, their minds were still extremely innocent. Thus, Lisa thought that Chandler was talking nonsense. By the way, here's the breaking news. A big boss was assigned to us, Brilliance Group, from the headquarters, Lisa suddenly said. Chandler shook her head indifferently. I'm a little assistant. It doesn't matter who's the big boss. I heard that the new president is the golden boy from the headquarters. His father is a high official in the province, and his mother is the chairman of the headquarters. He is young and handsome, and all the women in the Brilliance Group are dying to see his face. Lisa's mouth was dripping with saliva. This kind of man is too high for us to reach. Chandler rolled her eyes at her. At this time, Manager Chow, Chandler's direct supervisor, came over and said to her with a serious look, the new president has been on board. All personnel above the manager's assistant level will need to go to the conference room for a meeting. Chandler quickly took a notebook and a pen and followed behind Matthew Chow. Lisa winked at her. Chandler knew that she wanted her to take a close-up picture of the big boss. There was a crowd of people sitting in the conference room, and Chandler, as a small assistant, could only squeeze in the corner. In fact, she wasn't interested in how handsome the big boss was at all. Instead, she was thinking of the well-defined face she met this morning. Thinking of his gnashing face, Chandler could not help but cover her mouth and giggle. She felt guilty, more or less, for her vicious words, but in the end, he also took advantage of her. Besides, he got paid. Guys would dream about things like that to happen to them. With a burst of applause, Chandler looked up and saw a handsome man in a black suit walking into the conference room while surrounded by the crowd. Everyone, please welcome Mr. Michael Guan, the new president of the Brilliance Group. Chandler stared at that well-defined face for a good long time, so shocked that she could not close her mouth. Chapter 3. Being called. After confirming repeatedly, she put her mind back to reality. Last night, the toy boy on whom she spent $150 turned out to be the new boss from the headquarters. Oh my God, she was desperately looking for a place to hide. What a damn coincidence. Who would have known that the person one grabbed randomly turned out to be a president? Are the presidents on sale now so that everyone can have a president outside? Chandler told herself to be calm, but her legs were still shaking. She could only lower her head and hide half her face behind her long hair, hoping that Michael, who was sitting in the host seat, would not notice her. After all, there were dozens of people sitting in the conference room, and those nympho women assistants and managers were all indulging in the president's speech. He should not pay any notice to an ordinary woman like her, right? Finally, she made it to the end of the meeting. Chandler sneaked out of the conference room in the crowd. The first thing Chandler did when she returned to the office was get a hold of Lisa to complain. Lisa looked at her in shock. You are one lucky woman. You slept with the president just like that? Don't joke around. I'm afraid he will retaliate against me and fire me. I still need to provide for my mother and sister. Chandler freaked out. She regretted it badly in her heart. Why on earth did she throw 150 bucks to him? She even satirized him for his bad skills. The karma came too fast. Lisa shrugged. Don't worry too much. Maybe he didn't notice you at all. Before she even finished her sentence, the manager Matthew's voice came. Chandler, President Guan wants you in his office. Upon hearing this, Chandler really wanted to burst into tears, except she had no tears. She has no options. Even though she knew there might be serious consequences, she still had to go. Chandler stepped into the president's office with an uneasy mood. Michael sat in front of his desk looking at the document with his head down, as if he did not notice her arrival. Looking at his thick hair, Chandler took a deep breath and said in a flattering voice, President Guan, are you looking for me? As soon as Michael looked up, Chandler quickly responded with a standard smile. Although she felt very disdainful in her heart, she still dared not to offend the big boss. His eyes were sharp and cold. He looked at Chandler from her head to her toe as if he had seen through her clothes. This reminded her of last night's nude intimacy. Chandler's face immediately burned with a blush. Chandler hated his eyes in particular, but after all, she had to keep this job, so she can only tolerate it for the time being. However, she thought in her heart, so what? Let's see how she will treat you when she becomes rich in the future. However, the chance of Chandler getting rich is even slimmer than being struck by lightning. He put down the pen in his hand, leaning back on the wide leather chair, and then crossed his hands and sneered. I didn't expect the private life of the female employees of the Brilliance Group to be so enriched. This is really beyond my expectation. President Guan, your private life is also very enriched. Chandler could not help adding to that. We are about the same kind of people. I'm a slut. You're no better than me. Michael's face immediately got stiff and his lips twitched. He was speechless for a moment. Chandler quickly lowered her head. Although she was very happy in her heart, she regretted being so quick-tongued. After all, she still wanted to continue her career in the Brilliance Group. For a moment, the office was quiet that Chandler could almost hear their breathing. What on earth does he want? Chandler glanced at the guest sofa next to her and immediately she thought of something bad. He must think that I'm a very promiscuous woman. Could it be that he wanted to harass her in the office? Chandler's heart trembled and she thought, she won't give in to his power. Chapter 4. Who is cheaper? The next moment, Chandler raised her head and realized that she was overthinking. Michael took out $150 from his wallet and placed it in front of her. He said with a serious face, Miss Su, I think I need to clarify to you that I don't have any other part-time job other than being the president of the Brilliance Group. So please, take back these $150. Chandler could not help feeling a bit funny. Why did he fuss over such a tiny thing? Doesn't he want to claim that he is not a toy boy? I understand what you mean, President Guan, Chandler said with a smile. It turned out that the big boss called her to here just to declare that he does not have a special career. She would accept the request in a heartbeat. However, Michael's next gesture confused Chandler. As Chandler just reached out to take back that $150, he then unexpectedly threw another banknote on top of that. She looked at him confusedly and did not understand what he meant. President Guan? These $100 is your reward for last night. Michael's eyes were full of superiority. Damn it, Chandler really wanted to swear at this moment. He meant that she was a prostitute who was even $50 cheaper than a toy boy with bad skills. She was only worth $100, which meant she was humiliated for being cheap. If it wasn't for the fact that the whole family were dependent on her financially, Chandler would have slapped him directly and told him that she was not someone to mess with. However, she had to lower her head under his roof. Chandler, filled with anger in her chest, told herself to calm down and to stay calm. At this moment, Michael happened to stare at her with playful eyes. He wanted to see that he just took the upper hand. She would not let him succeed. After turning his eyes, Chandler went forward and picked up the $250. She held the notes in the air with her fingers and said to President Guan with a bright smile, "President Guan, a jerk." Michael's face immediately pulled down as Chandler had wished. Before he could respond, she said, "If there's nothing else, I'll go back to work." After running out of the president's office, Chandler shrugged her shoulders complacently. When she was in college, she was the best debate in the school's debates. If you want to argue with Chandler, you will have a long way to practice. "What does he want from you?" As soon as Chandler returned to the office, Lisa pulled her over and asked her in a low voice. Chandler rolled her eyes. "Just to clarify that he is not a toy boy." And then? Lisa wanted to dig out some other exclusive news. "There's nothing more," Chandler shrugged. "So boring." Lisa completely lost her curiosity. "You look quite disappointed." Chandler did not understand what Lisa was thinking. There were some naughtiness in Lisa's smile. "I thought he wanted to get more from you." Chandler immediately curled her lips and said, "I still want to live a few more years." The big boss is a knockout who can prolong a woman's life, just like a tonic. Lisa lowered her head and looked at the photo of Michael on her mobile phone. In just a few hours, Michael's photo had been spread all over the mobile phones of all female employees of the Brilliance Group. "Good guys always end up with some old witches. I'm young and beautiful. Forget it." Chandler shook her head with a smile. "Hey, what did he taste like?" Lisa approached her with a smile. Chandler raised her eyebrows and grinned. "It's sour. You can have a try if you don't believe me." "I wish I could taste it." Lisa rolled her eyes and returned to her seat. Chandler did taste him, but she was so drunk that she forgot what it really tasted like. No matter how good he tasted, he is still a jerk and an unromantic, cold-faced jerk. Chandler shook her head. He wasn't her cup of tea. Chapter 5. The Encounter of Enemies. As soon as she finished working in the afternoon, Chandler went straight to the nursing home in the suburbs. By the time she arrived at the nursing home, it had already got dark outside. When her grandfather was young, he was a soldier and had served in the National Army, so he was able to enjoy the treatment of a veteran cadre. As a result, he had been able to live in a nursing home. Grandfather was nearly 90 years old and had been bedridden for more than 10 years, so Chandler didn't have a deep relationship with him. She came here only for peace of mind. As soon as she entered the ward, Chandler saw her elder uncle and elder aunt sobbing in front of her grandfather, who was lying on the bed. "Chandler is here." The elder aunt saw Chandler first. She got up and came over. "How is Grandpa?" Chandler looked at the skinny old man on the bed and felt very upset. "He has already been issued a critical condition notice. He will be gone in 1 or 2 days," the elder uncle answered sadly. Upon hearing this, Chandler's eyes turned red, and when she tried to comfort by saying, "Uncle, you've been taking care of Grandpa all these years. You've tried your best." The elder uncle was just about to say something. At this time, there was a noise outside the door. Later, Chandler's unfaithful dad, the mistress, and his stepdaughter walked in. Liz Hu was the name of the mistress, and people called her Fox, except right now, she is an old fox. Her neckline was extremely low, and she wore so much makeup on her face that powder couldn't stop falling, and even that could not conceal the wrinkles on her face. The stepdaughter, Penny Hu, had big eyes, a tall nose bridge, a long face, big breast, slender waist, voluptuous butt. Chandler suspected that each inch of her body had been reconstructed. Besides, she had heavy makeup on, and no one had ever seen her true face. As soon as Liz came in, she cried out, "Oh, old father, how can you just decide to go like this? At least leave us a message and tell us about your will to avoid the misunderstanding between the two brothers." As soon as she came, the quiet ward was in a messy chaos. Chandler frowned. Obviously, they had been indifferent to Grandpa's illness for so many years. Now they were only here to come after his assets. At the last moment of Dad's life, can't you just let him go quietly? The elder uncle's voice was full of anger. At this moment, Liz stopped crying immediately and said fiercely, "Big brother, the old man is dying. Don't you think we should sort out Dad's house and the funeral money offered by the country now? Dad is not dead yet. Besides, the funeral fee will only be paid by the country when the person is dead." The elder uncle was an honest person. In terms of pestering, he was no match for Johnson, Sue, and Liz. At this time, Chandler's unfaithful father said, "Big brother, you can't take all the money to yourself. After all, Dad has 2 sons." You. Elder uncle was so angry that his face turned pale as he pointed at Johnson. The elder aunt quickly came forward to get a hold of him and asked worriedly, "Are you having a heart attack?" "That's right. The second son's family is also entitled to inherit part of Grandpa's money," Penny, the stepdaughter, also added. For a moment, the honest couple of elder uncle and aunt were no match for them. Chandler's heart was filled with indignation. She could no longer tolerate their vicious and nasty faces. She reached out and argued with them. "How dare you come after Grandpa's property? Where were you when he was sick? They were not blood related, but you are Grandpa's son. When he was sick, you didn't even pay him any visit. Has your conscience been eaten by a dog?" Johnson did not answer because he knew he was wrong. Liz was adding oil to the fire. "Chandler, he's your father. You would have been beaten to death in ancient times for scolding your own father like this." Chandler was furious when she saw Liz. Back then, she pointed at her mother's nose and scolded her. She regretted that she was young at that time, or otherwise, she would definitely fight with her till the end. Chandler raised her chin and sneered. "In ancient times, a mistress like you would have already been drowned as a punishment." Liz was enraged by Chandler's words. She turned to Johnson and said, "Johnson, who is the parent here?" Johnson said furiously, "Chandler, apologize to your aunt immediately." "Am I wrong? Isn't she a mistress?" She sprang to her feet and pointed at Liz. For so many years, her father had refused to give her and her sister any child support. Chandler remembered that when she was a child, she could not pay the tuition fee, and she asked him for money. Not only did he refuse to pay, but he also slapped her. However, he raised his mistress's daughter with extreme care and protection. From then on, Chandler secretly promised to herself that she would never take even a penny from him. She removed her father out of her life ever since. "Johnson, I don't want to live anymore since I'm being insulted by your daughter like this." Liz began to cry and howl. "I'll beat you to death." Johnson was furious and slapped Chandler all of a sudden. Chandler was hit so hard that she saw stars and staggered. Penny took the opportunity to push her in the back and made her fall on the hard floor heavily. Chandler was sweating from the pain. She hurriedly got up and shouted repeatedly, "I am not done with you." Chandler went up and gave Penny a hard slap on her face. Penny was caught unprepared. Upon seeing this, Johnson stepped forward and was about to continue to beat Chandler. "Bastard, let's see how I will take care of you." At this time, the elder uncle and aunt were afraid that Chandler would get hurt, so they quickly stepped up to separate them from each other with their bodies. "Johnson, don't be so violent," the elder uncle shouted angrily. "Johnson, beat this bastard to death." It was Liz's voice. Chandler touched the corner of her mouth and looked down. Her hands were covered with blood, but she felt pleasure in her heart. In the chaos, Chandler saw 2 people standing at the door with a glance. The one in the front was staring at her with dark eyes, and the one behind him was holding a bunch of flowers in his hand. Chapter 6. In a Big Fight. Chandler's head exploded when she saw him here out of the blue, and especially when she was this embarrassed. At this time, the person who was holding the flowers said to the group of people who were in a physical fighting, "Excuse me, does Grandpa Sue live in this ward?" The next moment, these people, including the elder uncle, immediately looked at the people standing at the door. The elder uncle was the first to respond. He quickly stepped forward and said with a smile, "Oh, it's you, President Guan. Please, come in, come in. President Guan is here to visit Grandpa Su. Here's some money. Please, buy some nourishment for him." After saying that, Bordelin handed over the flowers and a thick envelope to the elder aunt. At this time, when everyone was looking at Michael, he was also looking at the people in the ward one by one, including Chandler, who was incredibly embarrassed at this moment. Chandler had never dreamed that someone with such social status, Michael, would come to visit her grandfather. Her family had been ordinary people for the last 8 generations, and they were not even remotely related to people with power and wealth. When everyone was confused, the elder uncle quickly explained to the people, including the elder aunt. "This is the son of my old comrade in arms. He is now the president of the Brilliance Group in Zhangzhou City. A while ago, when my father was seriously ill, I asked him to invite the best expert to treat my father's illness." Upon hearing this, the elder aunt immediately welcomed him warmly. Even Johnson and Liz had changed their ferocious looks and began to approach Michael. However, Michael put on a cold face the time, and he was just enthusiastic to the elder uncle and the elder aunt. Liz was a person who knew how to grab her opportunity. After a while, she pushed Penny over and said in a flattering voice, "Penny, President Guan is managing a very big enterprise. He may have business with us in the future. You can communicate with him more." Her dissipated dad had opened a small insurance agency company. It was said that Liz and her daughter were good at doing business with male clients. Each time they were able to break one family. Liz and Penny. Chandler suspected that the names of the mother and daughter must have been given by the same person who boldly predicted their lives. One was a homewrecker, and one who sleeps with anyone. "My name is Penny Hu. Please take care of me in the future." Penny put on a very coquettish voice. "I wouldn't be qualified." Although there was no expression on Michael's face, he still tried to be polite. Penny continued with a smile. "President Guan, is it convenient to add you to WeChat?" "I never add business partners on my WeChat. You can add my secretary for business." Michael looked up and said. Penny didn't seem to give up after being politely turned down. She wanted to continue to say something. Chandler didn't even bother to listen to the disgusting words, so she said to her elder uncle and aunt, "Elder uncle, elder aunt, I'm going back first." "Be careful on your way," elder uncle and elder aunt said. Chandler nodded and then looked up. Her eyes and the eyes of Michael met in the air, and she quickly left the ward. The night breeze in spring was still a little cold. Chandler, who was in thin clothes, was not able to find a taxi after walking for a long time. Her hot face was blown by the cold wind. Strong as she couldn't help but weep. However, she didn't regret teaching that homewrecker a lesson, even if she was slapped in the face. When her feet were in pain from the high heels, a black Bentley suddenly stopped in front of her. Chandler looked up, and a well-defined face popped out the window. Upon seeing that face, Chandler bit her lips because the owner of that face was Michael. "Get in the car," Michael ordered. Chandler hated his tone of speech. It was not working hours, so she did not have to listen to him. "It's hard to get a car here." Seeing that Chandler did not move, Michael frowned slightly. Chandler immediately refused. "President Guan, you're an important person and you are so busy. I'd better not waste your time." After that, she turned around and left. Chapter 7. Nothing in Common. Michael looked at Chandler's back and deliberately shouted, "I heard that there had been several rape and murder cases in this block recently. The murderer had not been caught yet. The police suspected that the murderer is the resident living nearby." Chandler looked up at the gloomy surroundings. The sound of the wind blowing the leaves was so frightening, and she suddenly felt a chill on her back. The next moment, Chandler suddenly turned around and opened the car door. She quickly got on the passenger seat and fastened the seatbelt. Seeing a series of her movements, the corner of Michael's mouth curled into a faint smile. He stepped on the gas pedal, and the car drove onto the road. It was quiet inside the car. Chandler touched her burning cheek and felt really shameful for what had happened just now. Sorry to let you watch such a ridiculous drama. No worries. I have no interest to see others' embarrassing looks. Michael looked straight ahead with no expression. He meant that she was trying to judge his mind with her own vile one. Chandler really wanted to reach out and pat his stiff face to see if there was any elasticity, or how come he would look like this every day. Since she shared nothing in common with Michael, she wouldn't bother to talk with him. She turned to look at the night view outside the window and said nothing more. Over 10 minutes later, the car stopped in the front of Chandler's neighborhood. Thank you, President Guan. Chandler unbuckled her seatbelt and thanked him. After all, he gave her a ride to her door. Michael glanced at the community outside and said, You don't have to thank me. After all, you are an employee of the Brilliance Group. If anything happens to you, the company will have to pay part of the funeral fee. These words made Chandler angry immediately. What kind of boss curses the employees to death? Don't worry, President Guan. I will definitely live a long life. You better keep the money for yourself. After that, Chandler got out of the car and slammed the door shut. Whoosh. The next moment, the car rushed out quickly. Pooh. There was no decent language in the dog's mouth. Chandler spat at the direction in which the car had left. As soon as she got home, her sister, Zoe Su, noticed Chandler's red and swollen face. Sister, what happened to your face? Mrs. Su immediately came over when she heard this. When she saw Chandler's face, she asked eagerly, Who hit you? Was it your father? Mom, I also slapped Penny in her face. I didn't lose. Seeing her mother's distressed look, Chandler pretended to be relaxed. Mrs. Su said while soothing Chandler's face with an ice bag, Chandler, don't stress over it. Your father must have listened to Liz's provocation. Chandler threw the ice bag angrily and shouted, Mom, Johnson hasn't cared about you for so many years. Why do you defend him? You have nothing to do with him now. You are just strangers. And you are worse than strangers. Furthermore, you are enemies. Her mother was just like that. She had a weak character and she didn't have opinions of her own. Her father was her god. They had been divorced for so many years, yet in her heart, Johnson was still her husband. This was what Chandler hated most. He is your father, after all. Mrs. Su's voice was very low. Seeing her obedient mother, Chandler felt sad again and softened her tone. Mom, I'm tired. I'm going back to my room to rest. She went into her room irritably, with a burning pain on her face. Fortunately, tomorrow is the weekend, or otherwise she would not be able to go to work. Thump, thump. A few minutes later, after the door was knocked twice, Mrs. Su's voice came in. Chandler, I forgot to tell you that my good friend has recommended a university professor to you. It's not convenient for you to show your face. I'll help you make an appointment for next week. Upon hearing this, Chandler was so annoyed that she threw herself onto the bed. Since her ex-boyfriend dumped her, her mother had been looking everywhere for people to find her a boyfriend. Once she objected, her mother would cry and force her to meet those people. Chapter 8. The Blind Date. A week later, in one evening, Chandler sat in a very romantic Western restaurant and waited for the person of her blind date. The matchmaker said that the guy was young and handsome, and he was a university professor. Chandler really did not have a good impression of phony professors. At 7 o'clock sharp, a man in gray trousers, a white shirt, and gold-rimmed glasses sat in front of Chandler. Hello, my name is Howard Zhang. I'm 29 years old. I am from here. Now I am a professor at Southern University. The opening speech was simple and clear. Chandler checked him out a bit, and then she raised her chin and said, I have a few questions for you. The person in front of her was gentle and elegant, exuding the temperament of a well-educated phony professor. He should not be a phony professor. Chandler didn't really want to provoke him, but if she did not provoke him, she would not be able to escape. I'll tell you everything I know. Howard smiled, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. Do you have an apartment with 3 bedrooms, 1 dining room, and 1 living room? Chandler glanced at him. Although Jingzhou City was not a capital city, it was more prosperous than the capital city. The housing price was also high. If a young man wanted to own a house with 3 bedrooms and 1 living room, 1 dining room, which was more than 100 square meters, he must be either from a rich family or really outstanding. This question made Howard smile. I live in a duplex suite of 200 square meters now. Chandler was stunned and thought, the whole family must have scraped together a down payment for this duplex, and it must be in some suburban area in the middle of nowhere. She immediately asked, do you own an Audi A6? Howard's smile deepened. I am driving a Land Rover now. If you like Audi, I can change in the future. Chandler seemed to be choked by a steamed bun. She opened her mouth and couldn't say anything for a while. On the contrary, Howard stared at her with playful eyes. Chandler then made up her mind and said, I'm not a virgin. She stared at him and thought, I don't believe that you don't care at all. Howard looked out the window and smiled. I don't care if you're not a virgin. Chandler's anger was ignited at once. She slammed the table and said, are you crazy? You have a big house and a luxury car. You are a university professor. Why do you want to choose someone like me? What part of you is not good? Howard looked deeply at Chandler. My father ran away with his mistress when I was a child. I grew up in a single-parent family, and now my mother and sister are all depending on me. My ex-boyfriend said that I was not gentle and I was not attractive, so he went abroad with a rich girl. Chandler said all of these in one time and did not know what to say afterward. Is there anything else? Howard looked at her and smiled. No. Chandler lowered her head and drank the juice. She had already exposed all her shortcomings. Why didn't the guy leave? You are the most special girl I have ever seen. In fact, I also hate blind dates, but I don't oppose to making friends. Would you disagree if we start with ordinary friends? In the end, Howard handed Chandler a business card. Chandler took the business card and ate a free meal treated by Howard. Surprisingly, the two of them talked happily. She didn't mind having more friends, and she didn't dislike him. Howard insisted on giving Chandler a ride home. Chandler could not turn down, so she stood at the door of the restaurant and waited for him to go to the parking lot to get the car. Chandler? Someone suddenly called her from behind. Chandler turned around and saw her direct superior, Matthew. Manager Shao, are you also here for dinner? Chandler was a little surprised. I am here to accompany President Guan to have dinner with his important customer, Matthew said with a smile. At this moment, Chandler saw Michael and a male businessman walked out of the restaurant. Chapter 9. Blushing. Michael glanced at Chandler coldly and then turned to talk to the man as if he didn't see her. Seeing Michael, Chandler cursed in her heart. How on earth did I run into someone I didn't want to see when I just came out for dinner? Michael seems to be everywhere. Come to dinner with your friends? Matthew suddenly asked. Coincidentally, Howard drove over. Chandler hurriedly said, My friend is here. Matthew looked up at Howard, who was sitting in the car, and asked, Boyfriend? No, just ordinary friends. Chandler hurriedly denied. Chandler, why are you blushing? You are not like this normally. Matthew looked at Chandler playfully. Chandler looked up and accidentally met Michael's eyes. She quickly lowered her eyelids and said, Manager Chow, goodbye. Chandler quickly sat on the passenger seat, looked through the glass at Michael for the last time, and the car turned and drove away. Usually, she was straightforward and didn't hesitate at all. What's wrong with her today? Chandler asked herself in her heart. Early the next morning, as soon as Chandler entered the office, Matthew came to her with a serious face. Several days ago, the finance department made a serious mistake in making our budget for the development project. President Guan asked us to go there. How serious is it? Chandler asked nervously. The budget of this project was completed after half a month's overtime working by the whole finance department. She was fully responsible to keep an eye on it. Matthew was also very nervous. I have no idea. We'll find out when we get there. As soon as Matthew and Chandler walked into Michael's office, he was very angry and threw the 2-inch thick project file on his desk. What have you done? I can't believe there are some low-level parametric mistakes in the budget. Do you know how important this project is to the Brilliance Group? Parametric mistake. The parameters were all under the charge of Lisa. Her mother is seriously ill these days, and she has been so busy that she must have been negligent. How could there be a mistake in the parameters? Matthew asked in surprise. Find out who is responsible for the parameters this time. It has caused so much damage to the company. This must be severely punished. Michael was so angry that he unbuttoned his collar. I'm going to check it out now, Matthew said just now. Chandler quickly said, President Guan, I don't think right now it's the time to find out who is to be blamed, but to find a way to solve the budget case. Right now, Lisa's mother is still in hospital, and she has a huge expense. Lisa is still depending on the salary. Solve? How? Michael's voice was aggressive, as if he had swallowed gunpowder. Matthew lowered his head and explained to Chandler, There will be a bidding next Monday. We don't have time to redo the budget. Chandler lowered her head and thought for a moment. Then she resolutely raised her head and said, There are still 6 days to go before next Monday. I'll be responsible for redoing the budget. Michael stared at Chandler in surprise. Matthew frowned and said, Chandler, there are several major cases in the finance department recently. I can't transfer anyone to help you. I know. I'm sure I can complete the budget before next Monday, Chandler said firmly. Lisa can't lose this job. Chandler knew it would take a lot of time to redo the budget, but she still wanted to try her best. Michael's face was full of contempt. Do you think you can complete the budget on your own within just 6 days? Do you think you're faster than a computer? Isn't the computer also made by manpower? Chandler muttered. This sentence immediately made the office quiet down. Michael stared at her coldly, and she immediately lowered her head. She hated that she could never control her speech. A few seconds later, Michael said to Chandler seriously, Okay, if you can't complete the budget next Monday, you will be fired immediately. Matthew looked at Chandler nervously, but Chandler did not change her expression. She reached out to pick up the budget and said, Understood. I'm going to work on it. After that, she walked out of the president's office, leaving Michael and Matthew all surprised. Anyway, she didn't leave any good impression in front of Michael. It was impossible for her to get a promotion and get a raise in the future. It was better to keep Lisa here. If she failed to finish this task, she would go somewhere else to try her luck. Chapter 10. The Evil Capitalist. Chandler went home to pack up some simple baggage and prepared to spend her next 6 days in the company. 2 days later, at a lunch break, Chandler suddenly received a call from Howard. Howard, I'm busy now. I don't have time to chat with you. Chandler was a little annoyed. The budget work was far more complicated than she had imagined. I know you're busy and dare not disturb you. I've been on a business trip for a few days and brought you a small gift. Why don't you do me a favor and come down and take it? Howard said cautiously. After the last time, Chandler and he became friends on Facebook. The two had a great time chatting. They shared a lot of the same languages, so they had been kept in touch. Upon hearing this, Chandler was moved. He still remembered her even when he was traveling for business. Chandler looked at her watch and thought, anyway, this short period of time won't hurt. So she turned to the phone and said, Wait a minute, I'll go down now. As soon as she got out of the building, Chandler saw Howard holding a small box with a pink ribbon on it, smiling at her. Although work is important, your health is more important. Don't be too tired. Howard looked at the haggard Chandler and said, I got it. Chandler's eyes were sore for a moment. She had been staying in the company for several days. No one cared about her so much. It's for you. Howard put the small box in Chandler's hand, looking shy. Obviously, he was not a veteran in relationships. Chandler turned her head and looked at a few rows of benches for resting not far away. She pointed at them and said with a smile, It's still a few minutes before we start work. Why don't you chat with me for a bit? Sure. Howard was overjoyed. You must be very tired from the business trip, aren't you? Chandler couldn't find any topics. She felt that it was a bit heartless to send him away as soon as he arrived. I just went to give a lecture and enjoyed the scenery, by the way. Howard smiled a little bit cautiously. While they were talking, Chandler looked up and suddenly saw a figure in a black suit standing not far away. The man looked cool, with both of his hands in his pocket. He sneered when he saw Chandler's eyes. Then he turned around and left. Chandler could not help but curse in her heart. Damn it, he always comes and goes like a ghost every day. I can't believe I got caught by him even for these few minutes outside. Do you know that person? Howard followed Chandler's gaze and saw Michael. I know him even if he's reduced to ashes, Chandler replied through gritted teeth. Who is he? Howard asked curiously. A capitalist who exploits me, Chandler replied. Your boss? Howard raised his eyebrows. Chandler nodded and looked down at her watch. Then she got up and said, I have to go back and let the capitalist continue to exploit me. After walking a few steps, she suddenly turned to Howard and said with a bright smile, Thank you for your seafood. Howard looked at Chandler's back and smiled brightly. At this time, the elevator was very busy. Chandler stood among a lot of people and waited for the elevator. Suddenly, she heard a familiar male voice. No wonder people make mistakes at work. Do all the female employees in the finance department take all the chances they have to date men just like you do? Chandler looked up and saw Michael standing in front of her. Chandler, who just got dissed by him, felt blushed and also angry. She said coldly, President Guan, I only represent myself. Please don't judge all the other people by me. Michael glanced at Chandler's face coldly and sneered. I think you don't have to waste your energy. You can't finish the budget before Monday. His arrogance and disdain angered Chandler, and her chest was filled with anger. Then she raised her chin and said to Michael, Don't worry, President Guan. I will definitely finish it before Monday. After that, she walked towards the safety exit on her high heels. She would rather climb up the stairs than take an elevator with the evil capitalist. Chapter 11. Going All Out. Michael's sarcasm provoked Chandler to work hard with all her strength. From that day on, she had never left the office. When she was hungry, she would eat biscuits and instant noodles. When she was sleepy, she would lie down and sleep for an hour. After a few days, she became unkempt and she had dark circles around her eyes. This morning, as soon as Lisa entered the office, she rushed over and said, Chandler, what was President Guan doing here just now? Chandler raised her head in bewilderment. The capitalist? He wasn't here. I saw him get out here when I just came in. Lisa pointed to the door. At this moment, Chandler suddenly realized that Michael must have come to see her making a fool of herself. He thought that she would not be able to complete the budget before Monday. Damn it. Chandler rolled up her sleeves. This time, she must impress him. I know. The capitalist is here to peek on you. Does he have a crush on you? Lisa joked. Now the capitalist had become the nickname of Michael. Chandler glanced at her. He came to see me make a fool of myself. Seeing the dark circles around Chandler's eyes, Lisa said guiltily, Chandler, I'm sorry. I got you in trouble. You have been so tired for the past few days that you even have dark circles around your eyes, and I was not able to give you any help. Chandler raised her head and looked at Lisa, who felt guilty, and deliberately said with ease, You are not any better. You can't count on that brother of yours. Your mom relies on you now completely. Well, go to work quickly. You have to go to the hospital after work. Thank you, Lisa said gratefully and returned to her seat helplessly. Chandler lowered her head and continued to work. Every minute and every second became very important to her. On Sunday evening, when all of her colleagues finished working and left, Chandler was still striving in front of the computer. All of a sudden, there was a steady sound of footsteps in the empty office. Chandler's hair on the back of her neck all stood at once, and she suddenly raised her head. Michael, who was always dressed in a black suit, appeared in front of her. He was so rich that it was hard for Chandler to believe that this was the only suit he had. Michael took a close look at Chandler's haggard face and then asked with a serious expression, There are only more than 10 hours left until the bidding, which will take place at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Are you sure you can complete it? Although Michael's expression was very strict this time, there was no disdain or contempt. Chandler looked at the work next to her and answered with certainty. I'm sure it will be done at 5 or 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Michael nodded. Then I'll rest in the company tonight. Give me your budget directly after you have finished. Before Chandler could speak, he had already turned around and left. Chandler did not sleep for the whole night, and finally she completed the budget case at 6:30 a.m. She held the 2-inch thick budget case file in her arms and walked briskly to Michael's office. The door of the president's office was unlocked. Chandler looked inside the room and saw that Michael was already working in front of his desk. She thought that he was still sleeping at this time. Thump, thump. After she knocked on the door, she heard the deep and unique voice of Michael. Come in. Chandler stepped in and put the thick budget case file in front of Michael. President Guan, the budget case is completed. Michael reached out to flip through the budget case and then asked, with doubts in his eyes. Now, I don't have time to review the accuracy of the budget case. If there is a mistake in the budget case after we have submitted this time, our reputation for being serious and rigorous for many years will be ruined. Do you understand? Chandler immediately became nervous, but at this point, she had no return back. It seemed that she was going to make it or break it. Brilliance Group is my source of income. I won't risk the reputation of Brilliance Group. Chandler straightened her back. Right after her graduation, she joined Brilliance Group. For 3 years, she had been working hard because the Brilliance Group had helped her to support her mother and sister financially. Her feelings for the Brilliance Group were beyond words. Chapter 12. Contempt. Michael took a deep look at Chandler. Then he got up and said, I'm going to copy the budget case file now. The bidding meeting will be held at 9 o'clock. We'll leave at 8:30. You should prepare in advance. Chandler couldn't help but frown, and she asked, Am I going to the bidding meeting too? This project was very important, and it had always been supervised by the president himself. How could she, a little assistant, be qualified to go to the bidding meeting? Seeing the confusion on Chandler's face, Michael patiently explained, The budget case was remade by you. You will need to provide answers if some related questions are asked. Okay. Chandler could only nod. Michael took a glance at Chandler, then he turned around and left. Walking in the corridor, Chandler looked down at her wrinkled clothes and hurried back to the office. She grabbed her bag and ran out. She would go to the bidding meeting, and on top of that, she would go with the president. Not only would she embarrass herself with her sloppy look, but she would also embarrass the entire employees of Brilliance Group. As a consequence, the capitalist would definitely give her a hard time for that. She looked at the watch. There was still an hour and a half before 8 o'clock. She had to rush home and freshen up. It would be best if she could put on a light makeup and change into proper clothes. Chandler ran out of the office building hurriedly. She was waving at the roadside for over 10 minutes, yet she was not able to find a taxi. Damn it, how could I have such bad luck at this moment? But it's also easy to understand that since no one comes to work at this time, it's really not usual for a taxi driver to wait here for business. When Chandler was trying to figure out a way so hard, she suddenly saw Michael getting into that black Bentley in a hurry. Seeing this, Chandler had no time to think. She ran over and grabbed the door handle before Ford closed the door. Then she squeezed out the most sincere smile to Michael, who was sitting in the car. President Guan, where are you going? Can you give me a ride? President Guan, where are you going? Can you give me a ride? No. There was no expression on Michael's face, and he refused stiffly. After hearing this, Chandler cursed in her heart. At the end of the day, I'm still your employee. Why do you have to be so difficult to communicate? However, Chandler continued to flatter him and said, President Guan, look at my current status. I'm unkempt. If I go to the bidding meeting like this, not only will I embarrass the people of Brilliance Group, but I will also embarrass you. Where are you going? At this time, Michael finally asked her. Chandler immediately felt hope and replied quickly, I'm going home to change my clothes. At this time, Michael said with a cold face, "There's a problem with the copy machine in the company, and I need to go to the printing store right now to print out the budget case." Chandler rolled her eyes and immediately said, "The printing store that the company has been using is on my way home. You can take me there. I won't waste your time." Hearing this, Michael became quiet. Chandler thought he had agreed, so she immediately squeezed into the car. As Chandler squeezed into the car, she happened to touch the body of Michael. Chandler saw him move inside detestably and then reached out to dust off his clothes with contempt in his eyes. Seeing this scene, Chandler pursed her lips. She really wanted to go up and scold him. Even though you are a boss and a rich man, is it really necessary to be this particular? He acted as if she had a virus. Chandler looked at him fiercely, of course, when he wasn't paying attention. She decided to put up with it after giving it some thought. After all, she needs that job. Chapter 13. A Brilliant Guy. Originally, Chandler's house was not far from that printing store, and it was easier to call a taxi there. Although there was no plenty of time to make the round trip, she was able to arrive at the company at 8:30. However, for some reason that day, the car was driving very slowly. The traffic in the front was very, very, very congested. Michael looked down at the watch on his wrist and anxiously asked Ford, who was driving in the front, "Why is the traffic so congested?" "President Guan, the navigation indicated that there was a car accident in front of us. I'm afraid that the traffic will not be recovered for a while," Ford answered. Hearing this, Michael frowned. Chandler was stunned all of a sudden. Now what? She would definitely embarrass everyone if she went to the bidding like this. While Chandler was thinking about what to do, Michael suddenly said, "The printing store is right in the front. I'll run over there to make the file copy. There is a shop across the street. Go and buy some suitable clothes for yourself. Ford, make a U-turn and wait for us on the street." After saying that, Michael immediately got out of the car and left. Chandler was stunned for a moment, then immediately jumped out of the car and ran quickly to the store that Michael had mentioned. Chandler thought to herself while running, "No wonder he became the president. His ability of adaptation is far better than a small staff like me." Then she started to admire him a little bit. About an hour later, Chandler came back as if she had been robbed. At this time, Michael was already waiting anxiously in the car. When he saw Chandler coming, he asked straight away, "I was just telling you to go buy a professional suit. I was not asking you to go shopping. Do you realize it's 8 o'clock now?" Chandler looked up at the fierce Michael and was about to explode with anger. The store that he had mentioned was a worldwide name brand. How could she afford a professional suit that cost almost $10,000? She could only ask the clerk to take out the clothes on sale, and it took some time. She had overspent several $1,000s on her credit card. She would have to eat instant noodles for 2 months from now on, okay? Chandler wanted to throw up as soon as she thought of the instant noodles. "I'm sorry." However, Chandler said through gritted teeth in the end, because if she didn't apologize, she couldn't even pay off her credit card if she lost her job. "Why didn't you put the new clothes on?" Michael suddenly looked at the bag in Chandler's hand and shouted, I was afraid you had to wait, so," Chandler answered with difficulty. Michael's face got darkened. After thinking for a while, he said, "We can't make it if we don't leave now. You go change in the car." After saying that, he turned around and went to sit in the passenger seat. Change in the car? Is he kidding? Both of them are grown-up guys, okay? He wanted her to change clothes in front of them? Chandler really wanted to scold him. Is he trying to embarrass her? Besides, does he think that she was an easy woman? Chandler stood there for a few seconds. Seeing that she was still not moving, he rolled down the window by the passenger seat. Then a cold and stiff face appeared. "What are you doing?" When he yelled like that, Chandler panicked and she had no choice but to open the car door and get on the back seat. Then Ford drove the car into the road rapidly. Chandler looked up at the two men in front of her with their backs facing her. She was in a dilemma. The scene in front of her made her stunned. A barrier suddenly appeared in front of her and slowly fell down. In an instant, the car was separated into two parts. The front seat and the back seat of the car were separated. It was really poverty that limited Chandler's imagination. Out of expectation, the car actually had such a function. It seemed that Chandler had misunderstood Michael just now. Her face immediately flushed a bit, and then she seized every second to change her clothes. And she changed her clothes, straightened her hair, and put on a light makeup in the shortest period of time.